Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS.
The Nintendo DS came out in June of 2006, which makes this device close to 18 years old. It's crazy to think about how much time has passed and how much the DS has changed over time. And it's one of the first devices that I truly, remember having. The DS was the first console I have any memories of actually receiving. I mentioned in a previous video that not very many people watched, but the GameCube was my very first game console. But it's less that it is in fact my original console, but I have no memories of receiving it. I was too young to understand what was happening around me and to form any memories of when or how we got it. My brother does, but I was too young. But the DS is the first one that I actually remember getting back in 2006 for Christmas. And I love my DS. I would go on to lose it like 4 times and get a new one every other year or so because I would keep losing them. I was a really forgetful child and I just couldn't remember where I had placed literally anything. To this day, I don't even know where my very last Nintendo DS Lite is. For the purposes of this video, I ordered a new one off of eBay for this video, and I would say the whole community around the original DS and DS Lite has changed so much over these years, and truly could be one of the coolest homebrew communities out there. How does the DS still hold up today? What can you do with it? I really wanted to take a sort of a deep dive on the DS and really see what kind of things you could do with it nowadays. To start, before we do anything really with this device, you're gonna need to get something called an R4 cartridge. The R4 cartridge was this thing that basically is a Nintendo DS cartridge with a microSD card slot in it. So you're able to just slot a microSD card into it and load any custom software on the DS through the R4 cartridge, because the original DS and DS Lite did not have an SD card slot. Doing this allows you to run custom firmware, allows you to install emulators, any manner of emulation software or homebrewing stuff you may potentially want. And it's fascinating because there weren't very many systems that functioned this way. The only system I can think of that required some sort of game card slot adapter was the PS Vita. Because of its proprietary storage, a lot of people used homebrewing software to allow you to use something called an SD to Vita adapter, allowing you to use a micro SD card inside a dummy sort of PS Vita game cartridge, which typically this is something that you need to encounter on devices that have, SD card or micro SD card slots. For example, the PSP was fairly easy to hack because of its memory stick duo slot being able to just adapt to any kind of media type you need. And future Nintendo devices would adapt into using a sort of micro SD card or SD card instead of using, proprietary storage mediums or having no storage options at all. Moving on to what you can do with this device once you load that microSD card full of homebrewing softwares and stuff, which there's plenty of guides down below. I'll leave a link to ones that I like and I use for this video in the description of this video. So if you want to duplicate what I did in this video, I recommend following the links down below to see how I did it. The DS Lite and DS can basically emulate anything that isn't 3D. The DS Lite can play games from the NES, SNES, Mega Drive, Master System, pretty basic 8 to 16-bit stuff. You're not going to be running anything like, N64, PS1, nothing like that on the system. And it has native support for Game Boy Advance cartridges, assuming that you're doing a DS Lite or original DS model, which allows you to basically plop in something that I think it's called an EverDrive or something that you plug into your Game Boy or DS Lite and be able to play all sorts of the Game Boy Advance games or Game Boy games. Bear in mind, the DS and DS Lite do not support non-Game Boy Advance cartridges, so you can't get an original Pokemon Blue and put it into your DS Lite. That it's not supported because the DS Lite technically just has a Game Boy Micro sort of chip on it that allows you to play exclusively Game Boy Advance games. The performance of all these games are actually pretty good. It doesn't pass the Yoshi's Island test, which is disappointing, but it is a pretty fun way to play all your original Nintendo and Super Nintendo games on official hardware. There are many ways you could accomplish this. There are many different devices or ways you could be playing these games, but it feels different running these games on official hardware than it does playing these games on something like the Retro Pocket 4 Pro or even the recent Anbernic 556. Those are great devices and I love them a lot, but there's just something special when you're playing Super Mario Bros. 3 on an official Nintendo device. It just feels a lot more immersive and it really does capture that nostalgia that I have for my DS. And for those of you out there, it might do the same. It is an excellent way to maybe pick up something if all you really wanted was to play these classic consoles. You don't need to buy an extra handheld. You can just modify one you currently have and have an amazing experience. Moving on to value, the device is fairly cheap. You can get original DS Lite with a charger for about $60 or $100 depending on which model you find, or if you want to get a limited edition model. There are really tons out there for you to pick from. And since the device sold so well, there's just a huge aftermarket for these devices. You can even modify them and turn them into Game Boy macros, which is basically ripping off the top screen and exclusively using it for its bottom screen and for its Game Boy Advance functionality, which is very interesting, which is something I'm going to end up doing with this device, because during the filming of this video, I dropped my camera on it, shattering the top screen. It's very annoying, and I'm very sad, and I'll be ripping off the top screen and turning this thing into a Game Boy Micro, or Macro, and making a video about that eventually, which is something I get to do now. At a price point of about $60, it is a pretty good budget and value device. And considering how well these things sold, and if you're watching my channel, you probably already own one of these. So the likelihood of you doing this is pretty high. And, comparing this to some equivalent devices around its price point, you're looking at something like the Miu Mini, the Anbernic RG XX Plus, or the XXH. All those devices typically range between $60 and $80 depending on where you buy them. And the DS is basically exclusively going to be found on third-party sellers or something like eBay, because Nintendo has stopped making this thing a very long time ago. If all you're looking for is basic emulation of just the classic consoles, it's kind of hard to find something better than the DS. Sure, you might get something with a better form factor or a better screen, but it doesn't really compare to the feeling of playing these games on original hardware. It just makes you feel a lot more connected and feels a lot better playing these games on the DS than it does on something like the Miu Mini Plus does. Because sure, that device has a nicer screen or has its better build quality, I overall just enjoyed playing on my DS Lite more than I did those devices. It just feels comfortable. It feels very nice to hold. It could be nostalgia goggles, but I really enjoyed my time making this video, especially dealing with this DS Lite again. It's one of my favorite consoles of all time, and I really hope that I made this video convince some of you out there to take a second look at your DS Lite. Crack it open, get an R4 cartridge, which can be had for about like $10 off of Amazon. At time of recording, it is on sale. I do not know how long the sale will last, but I'll leave a link down below for the one I used, and hopefully it's still on sale by the time this video comes out. So that's the video. Did this video at all convince you to pick up your DS Lite again and maybe modify it or just play your DS Lite again at all? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you guys do with them. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.